Kuf Chesam and Aleph 108. Okay, we're heading to a discussion, like we began yesterday, fundamental question, which is, we know that if a shomer, a watchman who claims an item was stolen and makes an oath, he's exempt from payment. If they discover the thief, then the original owner gets to keep the kefil. If, on the other hand, he refuses to make an oath, and instead he agrees to pay, then if the thief is found, then the kefil goes to the shomer, to the watchman, because he paid for it.
Kefil is always
Kefil
double payment.
Double payment, always. Yeah, kefil means double. Okay, so now we're on to we're at the 2 dots, the 3/4 of the way down, a little more than 3/4 of the way down the page. So now we have an interesting scenario. So first he made an oath and he exempted himself, the shilam, and then he paid. And then they figured out who the thief was. Kefil, who does kefil go to? So over here he exempted from himself from payment by making an oath, but then he paid anyway. So Abaya says Labal Bikod, and it goes to the original owner. Rava says Lamisha Bikod Etzle, it goes to the watchman. Abaya Amar Labal Bikod. Abaya says it goes to the original owner. Kiman to Atruche B'Shvua, since the watchman made an oath, Le Mikni Lake Fela, the original owner does not give him the kefil, does not transact the kefil to him since he made an oath. Rav Amar Lamisha B'Katan, that's like even the shilam, because he paid Mikni Lake Fela, he does give him the kefil. The debate here is the same, is a debate around the Mishnah. Okay, this Mishnah I've already spoken about outside, both just before and yesterday. So let's see the Mishnah. So he gives the original owner gives the watchman either an animal or vessels, and they were stolen, or they were lost. Shilim v'leros lishava. So he made an oath and he didn't want to pay. Because the general rule is that you do make an oath. And you're exempt from payment. And they find the thief. If they find the original thief, the thief, then the thief pays either kefil or 4 and 5 if he slaughtered or sold it. Who does he sell it to? The Misha B'Koden Etzlei. 1 second. Okay, because in this case it was Shilam v'leirotz lishava, the guy paid instead of making an oath. He could have made an oath and exempted himself, but he chose to pay. Because he paid, he gives it to the watchman. However, nishba v'leirotz lishalam, if he made an oath and did not want to pay, you pay the original owner. In other words, if the guy exempted himself with an oath, the kefil goes to the original owner. If he pays, the kefil goes to the watchman. If the watchman paid. Okay. Now over here, he did both. He made an oath and he paid. The question here is, which is the critical factor? So let's see, as you might figure this out. Abaya daik me'reisha. Abaya proves in the first half of the brisa the scenario where he paid. Rava daik me'seifa, the scenario where he made an oath. Let's explain. Abaya daik me'reisha. Abaya proves the first part of the Mishnah, the first part of this Mishnah. Diktani, because the brisa says shilam v'leirotz lishava. The scenario is where he paid and did not want to make an oath. Specifically, he gets the kefil because he did not want to make an oath. Top of 108b. Panishba. But if he made an oath, afal pisha shilim, even though he also paid, lemihu mishalim, who are you going to pay to? Labal b'kodem, to the original owner. In other words, it's only when you don't make an oath, that's when you get to keep the kefil. Once you make an oath, you don't get to keep the kefil. And this is some shomer. This is referring to the shomer, the watchman. Yeah. In other words, the watchman, and that's really what the Mishnah says. The watchman pays and didn't make an oath. Because if the watchman paid and made an oath, then what would happen?
And the kefil would go.
According to Abaya, the kefil would go to the original owner, even though he pays, because he made an oath. Now, as you can imagine, let's go to the flip side, right? Rava Daig Mesefer, Rava reads from the end of the Brisa. Nishba v'lei rotza l'shalom. He made an oath and did not want to pay. Time until rotza l'shalom. The reason is because he didn't want to pay. In other words, Nishba v'lei rotza l'shalom. He said, I'm going to make an oath and I'm not going to pay you. Then what happens? If he says I'm making an oath and I'm not paying, who gets to keep it? The original owner. The original owner, because the watchman is making an oath.
Anytime the watchman makes an oath, the kafel goes to the original owner.
That's what Rav is going to try to say. No, 1 second. No, not anytime.
No.
Nishba v'lo rotz l'shalom. He made an oath and he did not want to pay. Because if he made an oath and he wanted to pay, then what would happen? It wouldn't go to the original owner.
It would go to him.
It would go to him.
Because
So you realize it's like each one's like, they're playing tug of war over here over the Brisa, right? Once Abai is reading the first part of the Brisa, Rob is reading the second part of the Brisa. We'll have to deal with it. They each have to explain the other side.
But why would the original owner get kafel from the shomer and from
Good question. So you don't get kafel from the shomer. You're only a principal from the shomer.
Sorry, principal from the shomer.
And you get it, and you get it again.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he had 3 payments for a stolen item.
Yeah.
1 for the shomer, 2 for the robber.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The answer is that actually, to be more precise, he'd have to return the principal from the shomer. So you'd only get twice in the robber.
Gotcha.
That's why they did. I woke up twice last night.
Oh.
and they weren't short. They weren't short. The baby was in a mood.
The kids were all.
No, the baby. The baby was in a mood. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You've been there before.
Yeah. No surprises there. Okay. 1 second. Time until I Shalom Hashilim. Where were we? 1 second. Okay. So now let's just review this briefly. First part of the Brisa says Shilim v'lo rotzi l'shava. Pay and didn't want to make an oath. Who gets to keep it? The watchman pays, refuses to make an oath. Who gets to keep it? The watchman gets to keep it. The watchman gets to keep it, right? Because the watchman is making the payments.
Oh, right.
On the flip side, the second half of the Brisa says if he made an oath and did not want to pay, then it goes to the original owner because he's making an oath. He's exempting himself. Abaya reads the first part, paying and didn't want to make an oath, because paying and oath equals original owner. And in other words, only paying without an oath equals shomer. But paying and an oath, that equals original owner. Rava reads the say for the end of the Brisa that making an oath without paying results that it goes to the original owner. But making an oath with paying would go to the watchman. So as you might understand, Abaya Kasha Seifa. According to Abaya, how does Abaya read the end of the Brisa? Because the implication of the end of the Brisa is that if you make an oath and you pay, then it would go to the watchman. But Abaya says if you make an oath and you pay, it goes to the original owner. Abaya Kasha Seifa. Abaya explains Hachtani. Nishba v'le rotza l'shalem kodim hashvua el la'achar hashvua l'mi mishalem bal b'kodem. Okay, this is very critical, and I mentioned it yesterday. I didn't mention it today. I should really mention it again. The key thing here is the key thing in Abaya is that you make the oath before you pay. In other words, this is a shvuas hashemrim. If you pay and then make an oath, the oath is meaningless. You have to make the oath first. So according to Abaya, the end of the Brisa means nishba v'lo rotz l'shalom, meaning he made an oath before he paid. Either he paid or he didn't pay. We don't know what happened. Either one, it doesn't make a difference. If you make an oath in its proper time, so then you've exempted yourself. You want to be extra and give him extra money. That's very nice of you. But you exempted yourself. The money stays by the original owner. Okay, so now the Rava Kasha say Kasha Reisha. According to Rava says pay that oath and paying goes to the shomer, the watchman. So the first part of the Brisa is difficult. Why? Because the Brisa says he paid and didn't want to make an oath, implying that if he paid and made an oath, then it would go to the original owner, not to the watchman. So I'm like Rava Hochitani, Shilam v'lo rotza la'amoid b'shvuasei.
Wait, what is going to the original owner?
The kefil.
The kefil?
The kefil.
Not the principal.
Right. So the prince, like we said, I said to Hill before, the principal, you only get one principal. You know, so if you're a victim of a robbery, you only get one principal. Meaning, in this case, well, it wasn't stolen from you; it was stolen from your watchman. So your watchman pays you principal. Then you catch the thief. You have to give back the principal payment that your watchman made to you, and you can collect it from the thief along with the kefil payment.
So then the incentive for a watchman not to make an oath and still make a payment. The original is he paying kefil or is he paying the
Just principal.
principal? But then if he does that, then he is getting kefil from the thief.
Correct.
So he's making money
Correct.
because he didn't make an oath and he gave principal. Okay. Interesting.
It's all about risk and reward,
I mean, yeah, that's
right?
bold.
It's an investment. By the way, if the thief admits to his crime, you don't get kefil. You only get back the principal,
Ooh, the plot thickness.
right?
Yeah.
Because kefil is a knas, kefil is a penalty. You don't pay penalty unless witnesses testify.
Yeah.
Okay, so the investment is not. I'm just pointing out the investment is not a great one.
Yeah.
Okay, so now according to Rava, the first part of the Bryce is difficult because the Bryce says that if you paid and did not want to make an oath, you got to keep the kefil, implying that if you paid and you made an oath, then the kefil would go back to the original owner. So the Gemara says, according to Rava, Rava would explain Hakitani, Shilim v'lei rotza la'amayid b'shvuasei. El Shilim. Meaning, Shilim he paid, meaning he didn't want to satisfy himself with Shilim v'lei rotza l'shava is to be read as he did not satisfy himself with just a shavua, but he paid. Either he paid or he also paid. Either one would be true. Meaning, if you rely on the oath, then you don't get to keep the kefil, according to Rava. But if you don't rely on the oath, or you don't make an oath at all, in both scenarios you paid basically, then you get to keep the kefil. Okay. Once we're on the subject, we go through a whole list of questions here. As you probably figured out by now, there clearly is some sort of incentive. Let's explain for a second. In order for, we just explained, for example, that if the robber admits to his crime, he doesn't pay kefil. So now the question is, who does he have to admit it to?
Oh.
It's very simple. He has to admit either to a member to the court in session, or he has to admit to a party to the case. Okay, well, who's a party to the case?
Yes, the original owner.
Okay, fair. Well. Maybe it depends on who pays.
Oh. So it could be the custodian.
That's exactly where we're headed to. This is exactly so. Who is a party to the case? So who, if you admit in front, you have to admit to a party to the case. Who is a party to the case? Does it depend on if the watchman reimburses or not?
Yeah.
What happens if you make an oath and doesn't reimburse? Is he still a party to the case? Now, let's get to it. Okay. Tavu Bailam, the owners demand, the owner catches the thief. He wants payment. The kafar, he denies it. The heavy Adam. I'm sorry, I missed the line there. Hold on a second.
What line are we on?
Hold on, give me a second. Sorry. I skipped line there. Shepikad and Etzlai. We're at Tavu Bailam L'Shimer. Okay. The original owner asks the custodian for his cow back. And Vinishba, he makes an oath, it was stolen. V'hokar aganev, and they catch the thief. Okay, what happened was, first was Tavu, so now the watchman here is exempt from payment, right? Tavu Shomer V'haida. The watchman said, the watchman finds the thief, and the thief admits to the crime. Remember, the watchman here made an oath and exempted himself. But the robber admits to the watchman. Tavu Bailam V'kafar. But then the owner found the thief and he denied it. And then the owner of a heavy Adam, he found witnesses. Okay, now there's kefil, right? Mi niftar agana b'das shomer or lo niftar agana b'das shomer. Is the watchman a party to the case? If the custodian is a party to the case, so then the admission counts as an admission and he does not have to pay kefil. If he's not a party to the case, on the other hand, then he denied stealing. So therefore, he should have to pay kefil to the original owner.
It's not part of the case.
But he's still
Shomer
part
is
of
not
the
part of
case, isn't
He
he?
made an oath. He made an oath to exempt himself.
the-
So-
Shomer.
Okay.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just, it's a
Okay.
question.
Oh, okay.
It's a
yeah,
question. It's an
yeah,
open question.
okay.
Maybe once you exempt yourself, you're not a party to the case. Okay, let's find out. I'm a Rava. Okay. So Rava says as follows, depends. Okay, the key factor here is, was the watchman, so the watchman absolves himself by making an oath. What type of oath does he make? The classical oath, right? 3 things. Number 1, he wasn't negligent. Number 2, it's not in his possession. And number 3, he did not lay his hands on it. And he didn't damage it. It's 3 oaths. In other words, he had nothing to do with the robbery in English. Okay, so Rava says, "Im emes nishba." Let's say the oath was true. He has no responsibility. He has nothing to do with him. So then niftar agana b'da'al shomer. Then the robber is exempt with his oath. Okay, why is this? Because since he said the truth, so the owner now he feels guilty, right? He was a custodian, and the item was disappeared. Well, during his custodianship. So therefore, the owner wants the custodian, if able to find the thief. So therefore, he is considered a legitimate party to the case to demand that the thief repay the original owner. And therefore, niftar agana b'da'al shomer, the robber is exempt from because of this admission, because he's a legitimate party to the case. Im b'sheker nishba lo niftar agana b'da'al shomer. However, if he lied with any point, let's say he damaged the item first, or he's partially negligent, and the owner does not want him as a representative, obviously, right? Who would want a lawyer to represent him? So he, right, just like, get out of here, stay away, and I'll take care of it. You know, if he can't trust him, he doesn't want him to be a party to the case. So then,
He's the custodian. He doesn't
because
want the custodian.
the original owner does not want the custodian as a party to the case. So then, lo niftar agana b'da'al shomer, therefore the robber does not exempt himself by admitting to the custodian that he is that he stole. Okay. Now we get into a technical one. Okay. So very Rava. Amad li shava b'sheker v'lo hinichu mahu. He was about to make a false oath, but for practical reasons, it did not end up happening. Is he still considered trustworthy or not? He was about to make it, but then there was a fire. Somebody pulled the fire alarm, and he had to run out. And then the next day he finds the thief. So do we say, well, he would have made the false oath anyway, so he's not trustworthy, or do we say, no, he would have backed off and would have admitted, so he is trustworthy? And as you might imagine, teku, we let it stand. If kahana masni hachi, if Yomi masni hachi, or if Yomi had a little bit of a different version. Boy Rava, nishbal sheker. A guy makes a false oath. Mahu. What's the story? Is he trustworthy or not? And the Gemara says teku, let it stand. Previously, Rava said he's not trustworthy. In this version, Rava says we don't know if he's trustworthy.
He'd be trustworthy as always the custodian we're talking about. But
Right,
the custodian
right,
is trustworthy.
right. Tavu ba'al l'shomer v'shilam. Okay, here's another interesting scenario. The owner asks the watchman for his cow. The watchman says, I don't know where it is. I'm not making an oath, so here I'm going to pay you. Okay, very good. V'hokar aganav, and they find the thief. Tavu ba'alim. So the original owner got the thief first. He demanded returning the cow. So the guy admitted and he said, I'll return it. But then, of course, Tavu Shomer, they went to court with the custodian, the kafar, and he denied the whole thing. The heavy edim, he had to bring witnesses. Niftar ganav b'hadas ba'alim alai. Does the robber exempt himself by his admission to the original owner? Matzi mi amrin do we say matzi amar le shomer leba'alim aton kimin shaklisu lechudami. It's illegal lechumehacha. Could the watchman tell the original owner, look, I paid you. You know, you're out of the picture now. It's my deal now. I get to handle the thief. It's not your department. You're reimbursed. You've been made whole. What are you doing here? Or do we say, I don't like he hechid at Avdislan Milsa and Anami Avdin Lacha, Tarchin and Basar Gan, Vashakilna, Anan Didon, Vishkal at Didach. Listen, it was very nice of you that you paid me, but it's not fair. Why should you have to repay me? I'd be glad to help you find the thief, and when I can catch him, I'll take the principal from the thief and I'll reimburse you for your troubles. This is what the owner says to the custodian. So therefore, he does act like a legitimate representative. So the Gemara says, Teku, let it stand.
Like,
Itmar, we learned. Nigneva ba'aynis v'hukar aganev. It was stolen at nighttime. The custodian was not responsible. V'hukar aganev, we find the thief. Amar Abaye. Im shemer chinam, who, if he was an unpaid watchman, rotza isa imadin, rotza nishba. The shemer chinam can do two things. Either the shemer chinam can litigate with the thief directly, or he can make an oath and exempt himself. Im shemer sacharu, if, however, he is a paid watchman who is liable for thievery, so then he must litigate with the thief and not make an oath. Why? Because the oath doesn't exempt him. He's responsible for the stolen item. In other words, we're talking here about a stealing, like sort of like a nighttime theft, where the owner is partially guilty. You know, he had a bike in his shed and he forgot to lock the shed. Now, maybe his backyard was locked, but the fence is jumpable. The guy jumped the fence. We're not talking here about armed robbery. Armed robbery is inus. It's a different category. Okay. So because he's liable for the damage, he has to go litigate with the thief to be able to get the thief to pay him back, and then he can pay back the original owner. Rava says, he must litigate with the thief and not make an oath. Okay, and that's because it was stolen from him. It is his responsibility to make whole the original owner. It's the custodian's responsibility to make whole the original owner.
if it involves an animal, you have to return the animal or a cash value.
If the animal's still alive, the animal. Okay. Lema pliga derafuna barovan. Derafuna barovan. Let's say this disagrees with the statement of Rafuna barovan. The sholach Rafuna barovan. Nigniva ba'initz of a hooker haganev. The animal was stolen ba'initz. Okay. Nigniva ba'initz here. 1 second. Hold on. Sorry, I apologize. Here, 1 second. No, I missed the word before. Okay, my mistake. Previous Gemara was talking about armed robbery, and therefore both a shemer chinam and a shemer sachar are exempt. However, because in this case they were able to litigate with the armed robbers, I guess they must have been disarmed or something. They did a FBI sting or something. So they were so that's the difference. Shemer chinam, we say you're able, according to Abaya, shemer chinam was able to exempt himself by making an oath. Shemer sachar, even though his oath would exempt him because it was armed robbers, we still require him to litigate with the thief and get back the money. According to Rava, both a shemer chinam and a shemer sachar both have to litigate if they're able to. Rafuna bar Oven says, Nigdeva ba'inus, it was stolen, armed robbers, and they find the thief. Im shemer chinam who rotza oisi madin rotza nishba. Im shemer sachar who oisi madin ve'ena nishba. Rav Huna basically goes with Abaya's opinion. A shemer chinam does not need to litigate, and a shemer sachar does. Rava says, what are we referring to? Okay, so Rava says that Rav Huna is not necessarily disagreeing with him. Rav Huna says that a shemer chinam could make an oath. Says Rava, it doesn't mean he could make an oath. It means he did make an oath. As soon as the opportunity presented himself, he quickly made an oath before they caught the thief. So then he's exempt from litigating with the thief. So the Gemara says, the Brisa seems to imply that he has a choice. Not the Brisa. Rav Huna seemed to imply that he had a choice. Either he can make an oath or he can litigate. Either if he wants, he can stick with his shvua, the oath that he's already made, or if he wants, he can litigate, which is the proper thing to do. Okay, so in other words, according to Abaya, you have a choice. The shemer chinam has a choice. Either he can litigate or he can make an oath. According to Rav Huna and Rav, as the Gemara concludes, they both have the same opinion, which is that you have to litigate. If a shemer chinam has already made an oath, he can exempt himself from litigation. He doesn't have to sue the thief to get it back. He can just stand with his oath. He already made an oath, so he's exempt.
Well, that's the paid.
The paid watchman must litigate, even if he's already made an oath. Okay.
What happens to all these things that are unresolved?
That's a good question. If the answer is that the one who's the muhsik would win the case, the one who has the money.
Oh.
How do you define that? It's another good question. Okay. But Rabbi Zuti had the following question. It's a very interesting scenario. It was stolen, armed robbers, and then out of the goodness of their hearts, the thief agreed to return it to the watchman's house.
Okay.
And then what happened? The watchman beat the animal until it died. Right? Interesting scenario.
Run that by me again, please.
The armed robbers stole it, and out of the goodness of their hearts, they returned it to the watchman.
Ah, okay.
And then the watchman beat the animal until it died.
Because he wants to not make a.
Not
so
sure.
that he gets.
I'm not sure. I'm not
from
sure why not.
the-
He got angry. He got angry.
Okay.
Okay. Mao, me amrini kiva nignav of oines kayule shmirasai. I don't keep the hadra shmirasai tekel. Okay. Do we say that his custodianship is over the moment it was stolen? He's no longer a custodian.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, I really should have clarified. This pshia here seems to be negligence. It doesn't seem that he actually beat the animal. He sort of was careless and allowed the animal to die. So now, if you're careless with somebody else's animal, you're actually exempt. It's only when you accept responsibility, like being a custodian. So the question is, does the custodianship end at the moment that he stole it, that the robber stole the item? And now that he returned it, he's no longer a custodian. So if he's negligent with the animal, he's exempt. Or do we say that no, it goes back to his original custodianship, and he is responsible, and he cannot be negligent. So Gemara says, Teku, let it stand, it remains unresolved. Okay, next mission we've seen many times. Hechem Pikdoini, where's my item? Amar loy avad, I lost it. Mash biachani, he says, make an oath. For Amar Amins, he said, Amen. He made an oath. For Edom Eden the witnesses say that, the cheesecake, he ate it. Mishalom Karen, he pays Karen. Principle. If he admits on his own after he made a false oath. Mishalom Karen v'chaimish v'asham, you pay a principal, a fifth, and a sacrifice. Hechem Pikdoini, where's my lost object? Amar loy nignav, it was stolen. Mashbiachani, he's making an oath. For Amar Amen, he says, yeah, I'm making an oath. For Edom Idnais Shikanfai, the witnesses testify he's the robber. Mishalom Dashlumi Kefil, he pays Kefil for committing the crime that he claimed he was innocent of. If he admits on his own, Mishalom Karen V'chamish V'asham, he pays principal, a fifth, and a sacrifice. Hagoizels Aviv V'nish B'lai. Okay, so now we have a very interesting scenario. The point that this latter half is really the discussion of the Gemara. You have to pay to atone for your sin. You have to pay Karen Chaimish V'asham, right? Principal, a fifth, and a sacrifice. The fifth has to be paid to somebody other than yourself. So, for example, Hagoizel Savav, he steals from his father. Okay? V'nishbala, he makes an oath to his father, and then he admits to having lied. His father dies. There's a problem. He inherits his father. So does he have to pay a fifth to himself? Or say that he doesn't have to pay at all?
Because the money would have gone to.
The money is his.
Is
His father died. He does not pay him to himself. He has to pay to the other kids or the other brothers. Let's say he has no money, or he's being very stubborn. So raise him a shalom Karen 1 second. Okay, what he does is loiva ubalechayv bon v'nefron. Okay, so here's what he does. Very interesting. He borrows the money. He pays back the brothers for the fifth, and then his creditors come and collect that money. Because his creditors predate the obligation to pay the fifth. So his creditors can take away the money, and that's permitted. Even though technically, like you think like he didn't really pay the fifth. No, it's sufficient. You pay the fifth, right? He paid the fifth, but then the creditors came and took away the fifth from the people he paid. His own creditors. In other words,
He's paid it to his brothers and everything, do they?
so Reuven pays it to his brothers.
Yeah.
Now Reuven's creditors come along, and they collect that money that he paid. It's much worse than that, because those were the same creditors. He borrowed the money from creditors to make the payment, and those same creditors come and collect the same money. Obviously, it's property because they wouldn't be able to pay money, but yeah. Similarly, one second. One second. Okay, if as follows: if a guy says a guy says to his son, "You can't have any benefit from me," but then when he dies, the son inherits him. However, if he says "B'chayev u'b'maisei," when I'm alive or when I die, then lo yerashana. He cannot inherit his father. V'yachzor l'banav v'l'achiv. The inheritance goes to his brothers or to the other kids, or even to his own kids. But if he does not have any, so then if he needs the inheritance, he has nothing to eat. So then what he's allowed to do is he can borrow money and tell people to go collect from the portion he would have had in his father's inheritance. So even though he's not allowed to directly benefit from his father, but he can sort of indirectly benefit by borrowing money and having his creditors go collecting from his portion of his father's assets.
Right.
Okay, Amar Rav Yosef says, "Afilu la'arniki shel tzedakah." Okay, let's say he has no brothers and no sons, then he can return the money to the community purse. Okay, Amar Papa says, if it's Tzarach sheyemer zeges olavi, he has to say, this is what I stole from my father. In other words, he cannot forgive the payment. The payment must be made to somebody that's not himself. The chaimish payment must be made to somebody else. You cannot have an atonement if you don't make the payment, even if that's because you inherit. So Amar Papa, I'm sorry. Okay, so now we get to this big major debate. Amai nimchel l'nafshe. Why can he forgive his own atonement? Sounds cool, right? Milat.
That's what Trump wants to do.
Yeah. It sounds like the indulgences as well. Milatnan. Didn't we learn as follows? We previously saw in the beginning of the parak a scenario where a guy forgives the Karen, the principals, but did not. So the victim, right? So the aggressor has to pay the victim a Karen and Chaimish. So he forgives the principal, but not the fifth. Alma bar mechilahu. Evidently, you could forgive the fifth. Evidently, the fifth could be forgiven. So clearly, you can have an atonement even if somebody forgives the fifth. So Amar Rav Yochanan like Kasha, har basic, Lili har Bekiva. This is a debate between basic, Lili and Bekiva. The Tanya we learned from Eila Ish Goyel, if there's no redeemer, lahashav ha'asham, to return the stolen item, the atonement. V'chiyesh adam Yisrael she'en legoyelan. Is it possible for a Jew not to have relatives? The answer is no. It's not possible, right? Because if you're a Jew, then it means your father was Jew, your mother was Jewish, or your father was Jewish, or both, and effectively at some point you have to have some relative somewhere.
What if you're a convert?
What?
If you're a convert?
Oh, there we go. Ela begez lagera kosem daber. It must be it's referring to a convert. Harisha gez lagera, harisha goz lagera. A guy steals from a convert. V'nishbala, he makes an oath. V'shama shemeitz hagera. He heard the convert died, and he was going to go give it to the Kahanim, because if the convert dies, the money goes to the Kahanim. Now, forget about that, and remind yourself about it probably tomorrow. But we'll talk about more exactly when does the inheritance of a convert go to the Kahanim? Money owed to a convert, when does it go to the Kahanim? We'll discuss it. Okay, so he's bringing his money to pay the Kahanim. Sure enough, what happens? He meets the dead guy. It turns out the convert never died. He was still alive. He heard the convert died. He was going to go give it to the Kahanim. And it's not true. The convert was alive. He met him. They turned it into a loan. They turned the atonement payment into a loan. Umeis, and then the convert dies. Basically says that the aggressor who had to make the atonement payment gets to keep it. Rabbi Kiva says, he has to make the payment anyway. He cannot forgive his own payment. In this case, he's inheriting the convert. The convert dies. He inherits the payment. He inherits the convert's loan, which means that he forgives his own atonement. That's not possible. You have to make the payment. Who do you make it to? I don't know. You make it to the community purse. You make it to tzedakah. You can't keep your own atonement. Okay. So the Gemara says, the Gemara proposes as follows. According to basic Lili, either somebody else can forgive your loan, or you can forgive your own loan. That's the previous brisa. The brisa talks about somebody forgiving the Karen and the Chaimesh, the principal and the fifth. It means that either somebody else is forgiving it, or even if you inherit yourself, you can forgive it. If you inherit your own atonement, you can forgive your atonement. According to Rabbi Kiva, whether it's it doesn't make a difference whether it's to somebody else or to himself. You cannot forgive it. In other words, both the victim cannot the aggressor, if he owns his own payment, cannot forgive it, and also the victim can't forgive it. You must pay the atonement. The victim doesn't have the right to forgive it. You don't have an atonement until you pay it.
Who's it get paid?
What was that?
Who's it get paid to?
So then I'll have to give it to the community first, the tzedakah charity. Okay. Basically, according to Rabbi Lili, this is true whether it's the person forgiving himself or the victim forgiving the person. It did not need to be alone. In other words, he could owe money to the original convert. The point is, Rabbi Lili does not differentiate between who's doing the forgiving. If it's the aggressor himself that's forgiving his own atonement, or it's the victim that's forgiving the aggressor. It doesn't make a difference. In either scenario, it works. But it's to tell you that Rabbi Kiva said it's no difference either. Rabbi Kiva says in both scenarios it doesn't work. You must make the payment. If you don't make the payment, you're not atoned. Okay, we'll see this question, then we'll stop. Okay, so now according to this version, our Mishnah that says that you cannot forgive it is going with Rabbi Kiva. The previous Mishnah, the parak that says you could forgive that the victim can forgive the atonement is going with Rabbi Lili. Make sense? Mask for Rav Sheish, see Hachi Rabbi Lili Shmeina Lenafshei, V'Kolshken Lacherem, Akiva Shmeina Lacherem, Delemachal, Kolshken Lenafshei, Lematzimach. Okay, obviously, it's much easier to understand how the victim can forgive the aggressor than the aggressor forgive his own atonement. Fair enough? If the victim forgives it, that's as if he accepted payment. That is what a forgiveness is. Whereas the aggressor forgiving his own payment means there's no payment. So why does Rabbi Yossi give an example of the aggressor forgiving his own payment? Meaning he borrowed money from the convert to repay his own obligation, effectively inheriting that loan and repaying himself or forgiving himself. And why does Rabbi Kiva disagrees in that scenario? It should be the opposite. Rabbi Yossi should be referring to a scenario when the Mishnah that says that that the aggressor can forgive the loan should be talking about where the victim can. Sorry, the Mishnah says where the victim forgives the loan, right? Where he offers to pay and the victim forgives it. The Mishnah should be referring to a case where the aggressor forgives himself, because that's a much more powerful statement according to Rabbi Yossi. And according to Rabbi Kiva, which is our Mishnah, Rabbi Kiva says you cannot forgive. Our Mishnah should be a case where his father forgives him, and that tells you according to Rabbi Kiva, even the victim can't forgive. So it must be that this is incorrect. Okay, so basically Rav Sheshes falls off of this, and he has to restructure the statements of Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yosef. We'll have to see tomorrow. Okay, great day.
That's enough.
Okay, zoom you in.